Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrisSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, May 14th, and we have a recruiting show for you today. Notre Dame's official visit kind of season is upon us. In June, Notre Dame's going to be hosting a bunch of official visitors to close out the 2025 class. They have 20 commits already. They want to add at least 5 or 6 more to the class to round that out. I think they're looking to completely be done. Maybe 1 or 2 guys in the fall if they catch some senior film that they really like, jump on maybe like a wide receiver, or maybe jump on an edge, right? A Viper, Jamie. We've been talking about that. There's kind of short on Vipers in the 2025 class. But mostly, for the most part, they're looking to be done in 2025. We're going to look at who's visiting. Some really big-time names are going to be on Notre Dame's campus in June. And there's also a commitment date by Mark Zachary that's coming up on May 25th. So we're going to talk about that. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please like this video. Please subscribe to our channel. Please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is. We are going live. Links to the podcast in audio format are in the description below. As always, Notre Dame is looking to complete their class, add to their class. You always want to add to your class. And we always want to add to our sponsorship game. And we have a new sponsor to introduce to everyone, which is Bend Marketing. If you're ready for a new website but not sure where to start, then let the experts at Bend Marketing help. With experience in working with Fortune 500 companies and small businesses alike, they'll build you a stunning website and take care of all the marketing tasks so you can focus on running your business. Jamie, it is very difficult to deal with the little minutia of websites and keeping that up to date. Websites always have problems. I kind of know, right? Like when you're trying to run your all the stuff going along with the show, trying to get the show coordinated, trying to get all the little things coordinated. You can't. It's hard with that, and you got to focus on the show as well. Bend Marketing will help you do that. Run your business. They'll run the website for you. Visit bendmarketing.com/ISD to get started. Don't forget to mention ISD to enjoy 10% off your first project. Very happy to introduce Bend Marketing to everyone. This is a local business in South Bend, Jamie, so it's going to be great for everyone. Jamie, how are you doing? How was Mother's Day? How did that go for you and your family?
It was good, just a nice, relaxing day. It's for the moms, right? Whatever,
For sure.
moms want to do. So my wife, we just chilled out. Whatever she had to. We did some family stuff in the morning, but for after that, kind of relax and just had a nice day with myself and her and my son, and it was a great day.
That's fantastic. Listen, know what your wife wants, right? The love languages and all that stuff. You got to know what she wants. People, they talk about what they did for their wife and everything. Listen, you got to go to the audience, right? Whatever they want. Like, Amy went out the night before with her friends. She was out. And while she was gone, I obviously had the 3 kids here. And we cleaned the whole house, right? I cleaned the whole house, got it all made up. So when she came home, house was spotless. And that makes her happy. And then that's all that matters, right? Like whatever makes them happy, that's what you do on their day. And obviously on the day, right, you got to, the kids need something. You take care of it. You jump right to it. You get them their favorite coffee, you get them their favorite breakfast, whatever it might be. So we had a great day with my wife and then my mom, and we saw my mother-in-law as well. It's a great day for everybody, and I hope everyone had a great Mother's Day as well. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Irish One is here. Very excited. He's ready to talk. Tyler Borgman has a question right away. Your thoughts on being able to get the class wrapped up so early and technically move on to the next class? Notre Dame has so many more commits than other schools. I think it's positives and negatives, right? I'm sure there's kind of negatives to it. There's also positives to it. It does allow them to move on to 2026 fairly early. It's nice to have, first of all, your quarterback is on board, right? And he's been on board. Deuce Knight's been a great recruiter for Notre Dame. Do you see any downsides to this? We see a lot of we see the positives, right, in being able to get a head start on 2026. Do you see any negatives to kind of being done as early as Notre Dame?
Yeah, well, I mean, the negatives are that, I mean, you better get the evaluations, the early evaluations right? So you're
Yes.
doing it with less data than you have for guys that, you would offer later in the process that you're developing relationships with later. So that means that you have to get guys who are like rising juniors. So those would be the 2026 guys. Like those evaluations, you got to get right, and you have to be on point with, and you have to be able to project a lot of these guys going forward, because if you're wrong, then you might be stuck with someone that didn't develop how you thought they were going to develop. And that's why too, like, you kind of have to have the flexibility to I know people don't like it, but you got to have the flexibility to say, like, I don't know if this person's who we want to have in the class, or if
Yeah.
we want to be able to kind of move off somebody, aka drop them. Which that's not something that they've done very frequently or whatever, but I mean, it's definitely happened, right? It's definitely happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm long before Marcus Freeman or whatever. This has happened, before with during the Brian Kelly years too. It's something that isn't uncommon, and it's far more common in other places, but that's just something that you have to get right. And that's why too, like, camp season's coming up, right, for these on-campus camps, right? June, there's going to have at least 3 kind of big camps for 2026 and 2027 kids, and it's super important to get those guys on campus so you can get testing, get them measured, get in, see how how coachable they are, all these kind of things. Because if you look at like what they did with this 2025 class, so many of these guys worked out on campus, right? Like, so many of them, right? So that's the kind of thing where I think that it doesn't that part of it, if they didn't have that part of it, I would say, like, man, they're taking way too many chances and they're not doing a good enough job of that. But Notre Dame seems to be so organized so well under Chad Bowden and Marcus Freeman, just kind of like how they're doing their in-person evaluations in May and in the winter, and then also in the summer when they're doing camp seasons, that they really kind of have a firm grasp of kind of what they want. Obviously we're going to see down the road how some of these evaluations work out and how they develop them. But think about last year, I think July, they were kind of done, right, with the class, really, right? So it's kind of the same thing. They're doing that right now, and that is able to kind of set them up going forward. And you could say that, man, you wish they were kind of in the mix for maybe a couple more other guys that were like top 50 type guys later on. And I think that is the probably the main downside. At the same time, when you're not in many of those battles, and you're concentrating on kind of like the next guys, that's less work for not just the recruiting and personnel staff and the scouting staff, but the coaching staff, who has to concentrate on the games in the fall. Like that's a big thing, right? That you're going to have to do less of that. So I think that's probably not something, because they don't, the days of having like, well, the USC game is a huge official visit game.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
that's just not how it works anymore.
Especially not for the current class, right? Like it's
Yeah.
the class behind, which is usually the case. Jalen G is asking about, I think CJ May, did it change its opinion? I think he helped them. I don't know if it was about him as a player, but he was clearly looking around. And so I think Notre Dame just said, okay, like, you're clearly not committed to us. So let's just move on. Like, it's fine. He was
clout
right?
chasing.
Yeah. So that's fine. Right. It is what it is. I don't know that they changed their opinion as him as a player. But it was more of like the situation that changed. And so they just said, okay, we'll move on here. Let's go to Michael. Michael, to his credit, Michael asked this in the last show, and it was kind of off topic. So he came back with this one. So I really appreciate you doing that. He came back to this show and he asked the question: choose one of Tanuk Hines and Tylan Taylor, and why. I've been a fan of Hines since he was offered, but not necessarily an option early until after the visit. Hines has the speed advantage. So Tanuk Hines does. His track times are A, legit, and B, very, very impressive. He's a 10.4, 20.7 sprinter, which is elite. That's elite speed there. Doesn't play that way. It just doesn't. I don't see it, so that's kind of hard. You're evaluating the confirmed speed versus the what you're watching, right? And so that's kind of tough to square. I don't think Tylan Taylor has that kind of juice, but I think he's a better football player. So I guess between those two, where would you lean, Jamie?
I mean, I would choose Taylor just because I think he's more like physically prepared and just way more physically developed. And then I don't know how big Hines is going to get. And like you said, like he's fast. And I think, I mean, I certainly don't think he would be like a bad take if they got him in that class or anything. But I just, for a guy who runs as fast as he does on the track, he doesn't translate to him being like, he's not Jalen Waddle, or Tyreek Hill. He doesn't look like that on the field, even though you would think, that's how fast he was. Like, so here's a perfect example. Anthony Schwartz, who was, a Florida kid.
Yeah.
And he was blazing track guy. And it wasn't like he was a bad college player. He was a good college player.
We're talking like 10-1. Like
yeah.
that like a completely different.
But I mean, he's not Tyreek Hill. Like he's
yeah.
not one of those guys, right? Like there's just some guys who are just like, when it comes to like changing speeds, changing gears, like actually getting on the field and be able to run away from people, they're different. They're different because if it was all about guys who were the track guys, then, those guys would rule the NFL and they don't. Right. Mm-hmm. So, there's certainly something to be said. There is something about like game speed. And I don't know if anyone saw this clip, but there was a clip that came out after, Puka Nacua, the BYU receiver who went to, the Rams and tore it up, right? He was like broke all like the rookie receiving records. Well, he didn't time very good 40 wise. Like he didn't time very good, but they mentioned they were like this guy in terms of his like GPS times were like better, like they were top 5 out of everybody. Like the guy played fast. So there is something to that. Some guys are faster in pads, some guys are better. And I would think not even just, I don't even know if like Taylor's faster in pads, whatever. I mean, who knows exactly? But I would say just with the ball in his hands, he's more of a threat after the catch. And that is something that I think there's things he needs to develop in terms of being a complete receiver. But what he already can do after the catch is greater than Hines.
Yeah. And I kind of think the answer to this question is Dylan Robinson, who we're going to get to in a second. Like between those three, I would rather have Dylan Robinson. And so I think that's where kind of the focus is, which isn't to say anything super negative of Hines or Taylor. If any of those three ended up in Notre Dame class, that'd be a good haul for them. Right. Especially if they can land Derek Meadows, who's also visiting, and we're going to talk about in a second. So, but I think Dylan Robinson is kind of the guy that they should be looking at because he's got good speed. He's not a track guy and by any means, which isn't like, I'm not saying he's slow. I'm just saying like you're not going to see him a bunch of blazing fast track guys. It's kind of like there's a Kevin Austin to him where Kevin Austin did not have good track times. Man, you put him on the field, it's like he's separating. He's got quick feet, plays corner. He's 6'3" guy playing corner. He's got quick feet there. So kind of that's who I'm looking at. To 2025, Mark Zachary. There's been some buzz about him the last couple of weeks and trending Notre Dame. The commitment date is set May 25th. He's going to be announcing his commitment. It seems to be between Notre Dame and Cincinnati. You got to like Notre Dame in that scenario, especially when like kind of the big advantages that Cincinnati would have is having a guy like Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens on their staff. Those guys are on Notre Dame staff. He's an Indiana player. He's been to Notre Dame a bunch. There's been a ton of good vibes there. You got to feel good about Notre Dame landing Mark Zachary in the class. That would give them Creed Thomas, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary in the secondary as far as that corner for Notre Dame. Would you see Notre Dame being good with those three guys and just moving on from there unless someone completely blows them away as a senior?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. That I would be surprised if it didn't, if they kind of expanded from that. Like, it would have to be someone who's just like totally exceptional, and probably someone that they were in on before. But
like Devin Williams would have to change his mind or something.
But even then, I think like Devin Williams, I believe he's like maybe taking some visits to other places.
Oh, interesting.
And it doesn't seem like Notre Dame is all in on it because too, like, I think too, like when someone's picking Auburn, very few times are Notre Dame and Auburn going head to head with someone. Because like Auburn is like, before there were bags, they were bringing out the bags. You know what I mean? Like it's a totally different atmosphere. It's like they are SEC. So it's a completely different thing. Like if somebody wants Auburn, chances are they're not really that interested in Notre Dame. That's they might be interested in some stuff in Notre Dame, but probably not that much. So yeah, but maybe him. But I don't know. I don't really see anybody out. There isn't that like, Caleb Beasley, like last year, who everyone kind of talked about. Like, there isn't that guy that I think that they've been like kind of working on the whole time, unless it's been in secret, which they do sometimes, right? But so I don't think so. Like, I think that's, if you got Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, and Creed Thomas, I think you're pretty good. There.
Yeah.
And and we'll see what they do with Golden and Thomas in terms of their future positions. But I think you got three good options there. And Zachary, I think, is, he's an outstanding prospect too.
Zachary's going to be the corner. I think obviously Golden has versatility, and I think Creed Thomas does as well. And I think that's good. I think they need that, right? Because you have Hobbs and Leonard Moore in the class ahead, and they're just going to be corners, in my opinion. Those are corner guys. Mark Zachary's a corner guy. I think Dallas Golden can play anywhere, obviously. People who listen to the show know how I feel about him. And I think Creed Thomas has some safety versatility as well. So I think they've got good athletes back there, good size, good athleticism. Look, the corner situation is as good as it's been at Notre Dame in a very long time. And, kind of the promise of Mike Mickens has really shown itself over the last, couple cycles here. Since the Ben Morrison class, right, with Jaden Mickey. So that's trending in a good direction. So we'll monitor the May 25th announcement for Mark Zachary. Michael, another comment here. If Notre Dame can close on Jadon Blair, all I can say is holy moly. I think Blair would be the top commit in the class. Dude is a 5-star in my opinion. And wow, just wow, Jaden can be special. So he's going to be visiting on June 7th, and we can kind of transition to that June 7th weekend. He's going to be there. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng is going to be there, and Madden Faramo is going to be there as well. A couple linebacker prospects, Jadon Blair. Let's throw up some Jadon Blair film because we haven't done so on this show yet. What do you think, Jamie? Do you see a 5-star here? You see a 5-star prospect top commit in the class?
No,
I'm never going to say anyone over. I'm never going to say everyone Dallas Golden. No, I'm not going to do that. But what do you see here?
No, I don't think he's. In my opinion, he's not close to that. No shots at Michael. Whatever he could. You like who you like if that's his guy.
Yeah.
But I don't see a guy who is like he. Yes, you look how he's built, and you're like, wow, this guy is like long. Obviously making plays in the perimeter. You like this. But I mean, I'm sorry, when you're a 6'4" safety, you're going to get compared to Kyle Hamilton,
Yeah.
and he isn't the same physical specimen that Hamilton was.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, and he's smaller than Hamilton, like weight wise, right? So he's skinnier, right? So he's got more physical development to do. I don't think he's quite as fluid as him. He's a very good football player, right? And
Yeah.
you're just talking about a guy who's just like, I mean, he's 6'4". He's got a 78.1-inch wingspan. You know, he's got a 30-inch vert, 113-inch broad. To me, if I see him though, I'm not sure he's quite like the deep safety that Hamilton could do all of those kind of things. Where him, I see to me, he's more box. Like he's thrives more in the box and on the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously that's something that Kyle Hamilton is doing for the Baltimore Ravens right now. But I don't see a guy who can open up with the same kind of speed and twitch and kind of instincts on the back end. It's not to say that he's not a very good prospect. He is. It's just he's not quite at he's not a 5-star level for me. Like to me, when I think of who they already have in the class in Ivan Taylor could do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he's a more versatile athlete. And I even think like Blair, if I would watch him, I would almost think, even though he has to gain weight, I'd almost think he's like more space backery, like than if that's like, I mean, just in terms of his skill set.
Yeah.
Than a guy who's like, definitely, I wouldn't see him as a single high guy, could maybe play the deep half, but I just don't think he's a guy who's going to, that's his best fit in terms of like athletically. Just to me, and I'm sorry because now this feels like I'm downgrading him because Michael was so high on him, but I just don't see that level of like twitch and just like pure athleticism that would make me think that he's like that kind of athlete. And he's he's an instinctive football player, a good tackler, long strider. So that in that way, it's a lot like Hamilton. He can play downhill and he can lay the wood. The ball production isn't the same, mm-hmm. right? That's the thing. You don't see the ball production as much, and that's why you're looking at, like, to me, that is always the kind of thing that separates a safety, right? When you see someone where it's like, man, this guy's just like elite ball production. He just finds the football all the time.
Yeah. First, I do appreciate Michael believing in something and putting it out there and taking a stand, right? I appreciate that, right? Believe in your guy. And you know what, Michael, what I suggest is if you truly believe it, go in, man. Go all in, put it on all the socials, stake your claim. Because if he hits, there you go. It could be a whole thing. I just think there's something to be said about, man, get that body type in the building, regardless of the Kyle Hamilton stuff. Look, Kyle was a special football prospect for reasons that it's just like, I'm not even going to downgrade Jadon Blair for that. Like, he's just, like, everything, it was twitchier, explosiveness, like when he met people, attacking blockers, playmaking in the end, running posts, returning kickoffs for touchdowns. He was just he was different. I think you're right in that, like, I do like the fact that he's a big guy, he's a lanky guy right now. Obviously he's gonna get bigger, or he's gonna get thicker. But he's very aggressive. He doesn't come with the type of force that like someone like Kyle did, but he's still doing the thing. Like, he's still in the alley the way he's supposed to. He is still meeting the running back where he's supposed to. He's taking the angle that he's supposed to. He's coming with
good at slipping blocks, like,
right. Like, so I see where you're coming from with the kind of box guy, because he's very good at it. It takes something, right? It takes something to be able to be good at that. But like, you think about him, you think about Tay Johnson, the type of bodies that they have and they could have back there. Even Luke Talich, right? Like, kind of similar to that size. And look, size is always good. And there's a scenario here where I think Jadon Blair becomes more explosive as he gets older and as he kind of gets stronger as well. So look, to me, it's like, I don't want to say he's a luxury take at this point, because you just, like, they have Ethan Long in the class, they have Ivan Taylor in the class, right? So if they don't land him, it's not the biggest problem. And I think that's kind of an issue with landing him in the first place. And this is why, like, I think when people talk about, you always take a guy, always take him, always take him, it's like, I think players like to be the guy sometimes. And I think it makes it a little bit. I don't know what it means for Jadon Blair. I don't. I'm just saying, like, for another team like Penn State, they really need him. Like, they need him, right? And Notre Dame doesn't need him. And so that might go against their favor. But I think, obviously, Notre Dame's pushing. It's not like they're not. So I think it's like, get him in the class, right? Get him in the class and have him be a part of that group with Ethan Long, good size, with Luke Talich, good size, with Bronte Johnson, good size. Obviously, we love Ivan Taylor, right? Like, Ivan Taylor is a very, very good football player.
Blair's got, I mean, it's great potential. And I really think he has a chance to be a really great football player. And I think, to me, though, too, it's like, the luxury part of it, for sure, I agree with you. But when you add in more guys like this, then it just becomes like, you want it to be the norm. You want great players. Yeah. You want so many great players that it's like, I mean, really, too, if you think about it, and it just kind of worked out. And obviously, Kyle Hamilton is the kind of guy who would have walked in to any situation and played right away. But, like, you want guys to come in and be so good that, man, this guy's playing, and we don't even really have a spot for him right now. Like, literally, Gilman and Elliott played all the snaps at safety the year before, and then they were like, we got to make room for Kyle Hamilton, right? Yeah. Where it's like, Ben Morrison, like, you're too good, man. You got to play. Like, Christian Gray, we don't really need you right now, but you're too darn good. Like, you got to play as a freshman, right? So, like, that's what I think you want to. And so you want to land as many of these guys as possible.
You want to get as much talent in your room as you can, right? And I think Tyler says, doesn't playing around other really good players help you look good and boost your stock than being a rose amongst a bunch of thorns? For sure, right? Like, you want to be a part of it, right? You want to be you will want to be a part of kind of a good safety room, or a good room, a corner room, or whatever it may be. It's just that the way that another team recruits you, it's like, you can just kind of see, it's like, I slip right in here. I'm their guy. I'm the top guy. It can work both ways. But you always want to be additive in that way. And one way you can be additive with your wardrobe, Jamie, you know what you could do is you can take advantage of the ESQ clothing, play like a champion today, game day jacket promotion that is extended through all of May. We did it for the spring game. We gave spring weekend. We gave Hit and Hustle members, ISD members, we gave them 40% off this jacket. Normally retails at $795. Brought it down to $495. People were so excited about that. You know what they did, Jamie? They bought them all up, and Goss said, you know what? I got to extend it. I got to extend the deal. So that is what we are doing through the end of May. Mother's Day is gone. Hopefully you did a good job. And then you say, you know what, babe? What I want is this sport coat. Play like a champion today. The players wear it on the player walk. The Lou Holtz is wearing it all over the place. It's a great jacket and as good as you can find. It's great quality, bamboo fabric. God's doing amazing work over at ESQ Clothing. What you're going to want to do is, if you want to take advantage of this, you send over the email to atourner, that's ATOERNER at esqclothing.com, or give them a call at 312-757-8500. Tell them you heard it from Hit and Hustle, you saw it on Irish Sports Daily, and they'll give you the discount. It's the best deal you can find. Go get it. Perfect Father's Day gift. I hope everyone takes advantage. It is a great thing for you or whoever it may be, that man in your family. All right, Jamie. Let's move on here. June 7, another player coming in. it was a big deal when it hit last week. Nathaniel Owusu Boateng from IMG Academy. You've got him rated as a 94, I believe. Is that what you said?
Yes.
You gave him a 94 rating, which is what, explain to people what that means. 94, you're projecting what out of Nathaniel Owusu Boateng there?
It means he's a guy who's likely to make an early impact and a guy who's like a, top 50-ish level prospect.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what you've got him at. Taking an official visit. He said 4 official visits. He's got Notre Dame on deck. He's got USC, Michigan, and Ohio State. Let's look at some film of him, and then we'll talk about where things are with his recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, this guy too. Okay, like this is where when you're watching him, you see a difference in the kind of like twitch and the violence and the speed. And obviously he's a guy who could chase down a lot of things, right? Like he's a guy who's got sideline to sideline speed. He can play on the perimeter. He really is kind of like a bigger version of his brother in high school in a lot of ways, right? And obviously his brother was a guy who played offense and was phenomenal on offense too. Like go back and watch some of his receiver highlights. But you can see some of this stuff like where, he's playing off the ball and, from an inside linebacker position and not just in space, but he can play in space. He can rush off the edge. He can get after it as a blitzer, and just, I mean, right there, he's a playmaker. He's a playmaker, right? Like he's a guy that is around the ball and makes plays all the time. And certainly one of the best linebackers in this whole entire recruiting class. And a guy that when we're talking about like, you want to have game wreckers, guys that can be difference makers. And when you're playing like the best competition in the country, he's one of those guys. So that's why you would want him in the class.
So I'll tell you what gives me hope here. He came to Notre Dame on the first time, and it was like, okay, like, is this going to be like a one-time thing? He sets an official visit. So that's good, right? The other thing is the other schools involved. You don't have Georgia in there. You don't have Alabama in there. Now, maybe he could visit later, right? But you don't have those Southern schools to where it's like you say to yourself, like, man, it's hard to compete with that Southern kind of pull if he wants to be a part of that, right? We're talking about USC, West Coast, Michigan, and Ohio State, both Midwest teams. Now, look, Ohio State, obviously formidable. Michigan doesn't recruit. This would be a pretty big pull for them. They don't recruit that well. They have 5 commits in the 2025 class right now. They just don't have that. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I like Notre Dame's chances more so against this crop of teams than if it was like Notre Dame, Georgia, Alabama, Florida. Like, it's like, there's a bunch of Southern schools in Notre Dame. Like, Notre Dame doesn't fit there. This is
Notre Dame was just the total outlier. Yeah.
Right. Like, they aren't. Like, he's clearly looking for a different type of situation. And I just think Max Bulla, this is where he could be an X factor here. Because I'm telling you, man, he's got it. He's got just something about him. I could absolutely see a bunch of guys being like, you know what? I just want to play for that guy. I want to play for him. I want to play in Al Golden's defense. I want to play under Marcus Freeman, former linebacker. I mean, like the Al Golden defense, when you turn on the draft and they're talking about how it's a pro defense, and you see Marist get drafted in the 3rd round, and the Cowboys are saying he knew how to do everything. He knew where everyone's supposed to be. He knew all the stuff that we wanted him to know, and he wasn't even the guy who was in charge of that. That was J.D. Bertrand, right? And so, like, it's kind of like with Kyron Williams when the Rams drafted him. There's like, they're running all our concepts. So he was just an easy fit for us. Like, I think with the NFL guys, that's going to start to resonate. You have Al Golden, who came from the NFL. You have Marcus Freeman, who played at Ohio State, and now he's at Notre Dame. And then you had Max Bulla, played at Michigan State, coached at Alabama, and now he's coaching at Notre Dame. I just think when it comes to linebackers, they have so many things going for them, including the fact that Notre Dame was really, really good defensively last year. So, kind of where do you see that?
Yeah, well, one, I wouldn't discount Michigan. I think people, whatever, people want to dunk on them now, and I get it. Like, please go ahead, like, and have your fun because, they just won the national championship. So please, and go and try to pile on them if they have a bad year. Have fun, Notre Dame fans, go for it. But I'll say that, in terms of their recruiting this year, I mean, so much of that is because they didn't really have it last year because so many of those guys were leaving and so many guys left too, right? And like Harbaugh has been like 1 foot out the door for like a year and a half. So it's kind of like a different situation. I mean, their kind of June officials is kind of like their chance to kind of play catch up. And Michigan, it doesn't matter who they've had as head coach or whatever, they always land top guys. They do. And it's not to say that they've had some classes that are certainly inconsistent, but they've landed a lot of like 5-star kids. While they've done that too, and way more so than Notre Dame, right? They've been able to track like the Rashawn Garys and the Dax Hills and some of these guys that Notre Dame hasn't been able to even get a sniff at, right? So, and some of that is obviously too like their it's easier to get into school there, right? And some of that kind of stuff too. But it's also too like I know we want to hate on Michigan, but it's like Ann Arbor's not a bad place, and they just won a national championship. So I wouldn't totally just throw them out that like, yeah, Notre Dame's for sure gonna like. Why would you even think of Michigan? Because I don't really know what exactly. Like who exactly leads, because if you've read all the stuff that he said, he's very glowing about everyone, which is fine, right? Like, and he might totally feel that way about everyone, and I don't know if anyone kind of knows him enough to get like a true read on what he really wants, because a week ago, if we were talking about him, we would have been like, man, I don't even know if Notre Dame's in it. Like because he hadn't been talking about it,
Right.
and he hadn't said an official, and then all of a sudden he sets official. He talks about it, and he talks about it all glowing. Now everyone's like, "Well, yeah, Notre Dame. We're gonna get him." Like, think about his brother. Like, let's see what happens, right? Let's see what happens. I mean, certainly the other 3 schools. Although I'm 100% in agreement with you that not having the kind of all SEC programs and Notre Dame is the outlier, like that's a good thing. This is much more similar to KVA and his recruitment in terms of like the schools you're going against, but it's also the same level of prospect where you're just like, this is that guy. He's one of the top linebackers. I think everybody wants him. They're all going to be like hyping him up and whatever, and giving him, he's going to see all these different opportunities. And certainly too, I think like USC will be able to recruit defense better with the staff that they have now too. So I wouldn't discount them either. But all you can ask is like, chip in a chair. You got a chance. And you're going to get him on campus. And that's all you want with a guy like that. And hopefully it helps that his brother won the friggin' Buckus at Notre Dame and was just an absolute stud there and had a good experience at Notre Dame and is balling on the NFL.
Right. Is now thriving. That's the other part.
Yeah. So that's something that I think it's unfortunate that he kind of wasn't there while Freeman and Golden, so he didn't play for them or whatever, so he doesn't have that a little bit, because I think that would help even more. But certainly he's going to know like exactly what it means to have these coaches here and what they can do for linebackers. So I mean, it's not like, I wouldn't even say he's luxury or whatever, but it's just like, those are just the kind of guys when you want to win a national championship, you got to win these guys. Just like you got to win the KVA battles. You got to win, you got to land Bryce Youngs. You got to land all those guys. Right. And it's because when you're going down to it, and when you're going to play Georgia in the playoffs, you're going to play, Ohio State. Just think about it. It's Ohio State. We can say all these kind of things, but there were so many different things in that game. Imagine if it was Peyton Bowen rather than DJ Brown on the last series. That's what just people. That's all I say whenever anyone talks about. This guy doesn't win. Just imagine that, like all these kind of things. Yeah. It's like those guys are difference makers, and you want to land as many of them as possible.
Yep. And landing more difference makers. Also visiting on June 7th is Madden Faramo from St. Junipero, Sarah out in Southern California. You've got him 93 rated. He's number 59 on composite. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng is number 45 on composite. Very, very highly thought of player. More of a kind of the middle linebacker like Micah Will. I think Owusu-Boateng would be like, if there's ever a guy who's going to play that rover, it's like kind of the Jalen Sneed. Like, I feel like even in space, I feel like he's probably more comfortable in space than Jalen Sneed is, or is currently anyway. And Man Farimo is like, we're going to put you in the middle and you're going to be a difference maker in there. What do you like about this guy?
I mean, I love it. I mean, you see here he is playing with a club on his arm.
And then he strips.
Yeah, right? He strips with the other hand. Like, I mean, how could you not love that, right? And the other thing you got to remember about this guy played safety as a freshman and sophomore. Mm-hmm. And so he's 1 year of linebacker. So a lot of the stuff you see right now is see ball, get ball, because that is, he's making that transition. But even then, he's like more advanced than that, what you would see for a guy who's just making that first year of playing, like closer to the line of scrimmage more consistently. But he's a very similar to KVA in a lot of ways too, right? Where you're like, oh, this guy could be a Mike backer, but he also could be an edge, and he might even grow into a Viper, because I believe he's like close to 230 right now. So, he's physically developed. He is a guy who's obviously, you see, like, these are like textbook tackles, right? Like, and a really, really good athlete, physical, explosive, edge rush potential. I mean, to me, I would say, it's just slightly under Owusu-Boateng in terms of just like what we're talking about of like, where I would rate him. And obviously that's kind of like, he's a 93, Boateng's a 94, but like, he just kind of does all these things. And I'm really excited. I think this is probably a guy who's going to be even better as a senior. Obviously he's going to play more, play more linebacker. And I'm sky high in his potential. One of my favorite prospects.
I love getting them on campus at the same time, because it's like, you want to play with him? Do you want to play with him? And also, do you want to play with KVA? Right? Like, it just could, that's the situation we were talking about in the chat, where it's like, man, look at these dudes they have in here and what we could be with this defense, and what they have with our linebacker coach. Like, I just think, again, it's just, there's kind of a snowball effect to it. They've recruited linebackers well in the past. So it's one of those things, like, I'm going to come in and be a part of a great group. And someone else mentioned, like, you don't want to come in and be like the diamond in the rough, or the one guy who like is standing out over everyone else. Like, man, we got a bunch of dudes in this room, and so getting them on campus, I think, is huge. Getting them on campus at the same time is huge. Notre Dame's going to have a plan for them. It's a very defensive heavy date on June 7th. There's going to be a bunch of defensive guys.
I love that. It's
just smart, right? It's a smart thing to do. Get them all at the same time. And so you can kind of have that feel to it. It's a really good decision by Notre Dame to make that happen. So we're going to monitor that on the 7th. On June 11th, wide receiver Dylan Robinson out of Bonita, also in Southern California. Jamie, they're rating the locals for me out here. Dylan Robinson is a recent offer. Very exciting prospect. I love his size. I love his feet. I told you he could go high point the ball. He's good after the catch. I love that he's playing corner. He's got that footwork. He's got the smooth hips. He plays the ball really well as a corner. He's to me pretty important prospect in the class. I think he's really jumped up for me in terms of, man, I really think it would be good for Notre Dame to land him here.
Yeah, I mean, just he's a size speed guy. Guy ran a 4.49 recently at
that's a laser time.
That's a laser time.
That's legit.
Yeah, it is very legit. And 4.49 with a 30-inch vert. And obviously he's got the size too, right?
Yeah.
He is, I think when you're looking at a guy like that, when we're talking about some of the stuff that he has to develop as a receiver. Obviously he's got ball skills, not that part, just like in terms of just route running, understanding coverages and all this kind of stuff. But you can just see there's just not many athletes like this. There's just not many athletes that are like big, who can go up, snatch it away from people, can stretch the field vertically. And like you said, like he plays corner on defense, and he's kind of like a Cam Hart type, really, on defense too, right? So I think he's one of these guys too that he might take a minute to kind of get to where you need him to be, like a lot of big receivers in who come out of high school, but his ceiling is sky high, and he's just one of these guys that when we're talking about so I wrote an article this week that was talking about like kind of like criteria that national championship teams have had in the CFP era. And one of the things that they have is like, day one or day two receivers or skill talent, right? Tight ends, receivers who were drafted in the first or second or third round. And this is a guy that he has that kind of athleticism, the projectable athleticism to be that kind of guy, to be a Boykin, a Claypool type of receiver. And really, like, that's kind of what Notre Dame's been missing when you look at these other classes, because I would say, even if you look at like Micah Gilbert, who's obviously looked good so far, and I don't want to discount him or anything. He's probably going to be a really good player for Notre Dame. But I wouldn't say he's the same kind of speed as Robinson. I think Robinson's a bit faster. So I think, and really, if you think of Gilbert, it was like they have been kind of missing. They need to follow that up. You can't just have Gilbert be a guy and then, not having. You want to keep stacking those up, like when you did with Equinemius St. Brown and Boykin and Claypool and all those guys. And I think that's like going to be that's kind of one of the things that makes him like super important.
Yeah. Like we talk about compliments to the class, right? And putting together a wide receiver group that like is versatile and can do multiple things. Like I think Sean Terry is run after catch guy, get the ball in his hands, right? And let him cook. Right. And I think Elijah Burris is a like really good route runner. Kind of he reminds me of like Steve Smith from like USC back in the day. Like just really good route runner, like very crafty, knows how to get in and out of routes, knows how to find spots and zones. I think he's got a little bit more juice, like especially after the catch than people think, right? Like I think people only think of him as a route runner. I think he's got a little bit more than that. But those aren't guys who you say, man, we're just going to line him up against your guy and my guy's going to win, And I think that Dylan Robinson and then Derek Meadows kind of have that where it's like, we don't need to, like, they don't need to find a soft spot in the zone. We're just going to run them on a post or run them on a dig or whatever it might be. And they're going to win and they're going to beat your guy. And that's what Notre Dame needs. In addition to the run after catch, Sean Terry, in addition to the route runner, Elijah Burris, right? And you put it all together, and then you've got like a really good group, and then like you said, upside, high draftability, but also up the potential to be very good college football players from those other guys. So I just think that's why I think he's so important, because they need to, like, the way that they're building out their corner room. That's how you got to build out your wide receiver room at this point. So kind of how do you feel like he matches up with Derek Meadows as well? Because he'll be coming in on that next weekend, June 14th. Derek Meadows will be in.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Meadows is a bit freakier. I think that I mean, he's not only just like a bit bigger, but you know, I would say just in terms of just like when you see him jump up and go get it, like it looks different. It looks different. He's a bit freakier of an athlete.
Well, Michael asked the question here. I guess we could just do a direct comparison between Robinson and Meadows, where kind of how they compare. You're kind of doing that now, but
Yeah, I mean that's
all the
just
way.
yeah, exactly right. So look, you read our minds, Michael.
Yes.
I think yeah, I would say he's just like a bit freakier, but they're kind of like comparable in a lot of ways, right? When you're thinking about like big guys in the Claypool Boykin mode who can stretch the field, go up, high point the football, when guys that could be guys that when you're looking at like creating explosive plays with big players, not just winning contested catches. Yes, they can win contested catches, but also run by people.
Mhm.
Like you can't do what the corners did at Clemson last year, where they're like, we're sitting at 10 because guess what? You can't run by us, and just anything underneath, we're gonna swallow up and whatever. Like there's nothing there that would scare people. And with these guys, that's what they'll do. They'll scare you vertically. And that's why I think in a lot of ways they're kind of similar, but you need multiple guys like that. So that's why I think what you were getting at before, Greg, is something that I'm like a big believer in, is that like a receiver room almost has to be like building a basketball team. Yeah. Like you need a 3-and-D guy, and you need a big who can be a rim protector, and you need this and you need that, right? And it's like, yes, for receiver, like you said, you need guys who can make plays after the catch. You need guys who can win in man coverage. You need guys that are great route runners. You need this, and obviously, you want someone who can like do it all. If you could get like a Larry Fitzgerald who could fit all these boxes, sure, yeah, but body types are different, skill sets are different, but it's not like you should throw away guys that have other skill sets that can help you. And if you don't have a guy who's like a true blue number one who can win in every single way, you want to have all these other guys who can win in different ways. And really too, I would say too, with Meadows and Robinson, really, like, you're looking at guys that, although I don't think they are, I mean, certainly not nowhere Jade Greathouse in terms of polish and where they're nowhere close to where they are,
right,
from that sense. But when we're talking about long term, these guys could be wide receiver once later on in their career, and you want to land as many of those guys as possible.
Yeah, and I don't like I'm now that Notre Dame has Mike Denbrock in fold, especially, like I kind of get away from like mentally, I don't view guys as like, okay, boundary, field, slot. Like maybe slot a little bit more, but like the difference between boundary and field to me is not as important, because I just feel like Mike Denbrock does such a good job of moving guys around and getting them to spots where it's like he can make a play from here or whatever. It's like kind of what you said, like having multiple number ones on your team, like they had at LSU. Like they had Brian Thomas and they had Malik Neighbors. They're both number ones. It's not like one is a slot or a boundary or whatever. Like they were all over the place because they can win all over the place. And that's what, and not just that, but they can win any kind of way against any kind of defense. It's like you said, you play a team against Clemson. It's like you want to press, then fine, like press them. And that's okay. Like no, they can win that way as well. You want to play off, they can win that way. So like, I think getting those types of guys in your, in your program is what you want. Like I was just looking at Robinson's, because I actually don't even know. Like I was like, I don't even know where he's actually ranked nationally. And he's outside the top 247. He's got a 90 rating. You've got him at 91, but I don't even think of him in those terms, because it kind of doesn't even matter. Like to me, he has something that they kind of don't have on the roster. Get him on campus, and like he could be like you said, a wide receiver 1 for Notre Dame. And that's how I view him, right? Regardless of what the ranking is. Like he's ranked so much lower than Derek Meadows. And I just don't see like a huge gap in their A ceiling and B ability right now. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. So
well, I have Meadows as a 92, so it's not like it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not that I'm not hating on whatever, because I think like 24/7, maybe someone else has him as like a 5-star, which they're doing because he's like tearing up like 7-on stuff and putting up freaky athleticism numbers, which is fine. But I'm like, I'm waiting. I'll boost him up when I see him do it for Bishop Gorman. You know what I mean? Like I want to see a little bit more. They barely targeted him. And we are playing football here. So
we are playing football.
We are playing football. So I do think that I would say both those guys can see like really rising up, and I wouldn't be surprised if either did quite a bit.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to monitor that situation. Check that out as the official visits come in. Irish Sports Daily is gonna have a whole bunch of information on that. Jamie, we have a third sponsor here that I need to get going. We need to fit in. We need to get them their love. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. VSR Media. We've been watching a ton of highlights for these football players, and if you want to highlight that what looks good, that pops, you get noticed by colleges, by guys like Jamie, by guys like Matt, who are pouring through film all the time, then you want to go to VSRmediacompany.com, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at VSRmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Last thing, Jamie, as we kind of, I don't want to say close out the recruiting class because they still have to land some of these players, but as we see where they're going with this. We see who they might land, who their targets are, who they're after. I think there was a lot of consternation probably around like February, March as to what kind of class this is going to be. I think people were pretty nervous, right? Anytime we would have a recruiting show, it's like, a lot of 3-stars, like a lot of low-rated guys. And now that they've added the Dallas Goldens, they're closing in on Mark Zachary, right? You got Derek Meadows visiting. You've got Owusu Boateng visiting. You've got Faremo visiting. Robinson visiting. Where are you at mentally with the kind of class that Notre Dame is poised to land in 2025?
I mean, I always thought that this is kind of how it was going to go. Like, if you looked at kind of like the remaining targets on the board, where they're like still in contention for a lot of these top guys, and then it just became a questioning of like, are they going to close on whatever? So they closed on Golden. If you can close on Zachary, which looks likely, like then all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, it changes the outlook. That already changes the outlook of the class. And then it's about closing on these next guys. But like, could they be left scrambling, after officials? It's possible, but it's probably not likely, because traditionally this staff in the last 2 cycles, when they've gotten these guys and these officials, they've done really well with these guys. So they probably aren't going to land all of those guys that we mentioned. They're going to land most of them, probably. Like, that's just kind of how it's gone. I also think of like, if anyone, people should check out, you could check out Irish Sports' YouTube page to look at video that Christian put up. He was at the showcase in Connecticut where Notre Dame commits Ethan Long was there. Notre Dame commit Ethan Long was their safety commit. Matty Augustine and Will Black, 2 offensive tackles there. Do yourself a favor, go watch some of those highlights of these guys working out drill work and some of the other stuff. Like Matty Augustine and Will Black are 3 stars at some places. I know, like, whatever, On Three's got, Will Black very high.
Yeah.
Right. And, I have both those guys as 4 stars. And really, too, like, I think I might be too low on both those guys, but definitely some of these other places are too low on them. Like, watch them, watch these guys move, and you can understand why they were like priority guys for Notre Dame when they worked them out at big man camp last year, and why these guys have been that way and been viewed that way the entire time. It's just that, they're in New England, so I guess like they're not getting the same amount of love, but like we're talking about traits here. We're not talking about like anything else. And these guys have like elite traits. So I think that's the other thing, is that I think there are guys in the class right now currently that are underrated. I don't see too many guys dropping lower. There's always going to be some guys who drop. That's just how it is, right? Like, and I know people get upset about it, but it's a fact. Like, people will drop, like, and whether it's deserving or not, there's going to be some people who drop. Like, so like Owen Streebig goes and he's like becomes like he has a bad highlight in the thing. I mean, believe me, someone will overreact to it and probably drop him because of it, maybe not just because of that, maybe the entire workout, but there's going to be stuff. There's going to be fluctuation there. But I promise you, there's going to be a decent amount of guys that move up. And I think some of these guys have a chance to move up like significantly.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to show too, that comes back to those early evaluations where they're like, nah, like these guys are like studs. They should be here. And I think too, if you look at offer list wise too, those guys kind of fit it. And it's more of like the recruiting, sites that have been kind of behind there than anything else.
Yeah. And I think with Notre Dame taking a bunch of guys early, it's like fans get nervous, and that's understandable at the moment, because it's like, you do have to set yourself up later to get your kind of top guys, but they have done that, right? With the June officials, who's coming in, they've given themselves a good chance with a lot of these top players. And so we'll just see how it goes. Right. And so, you don't want to pat on the back until players are, committed and then ultimately sign. You don't want to go tooting horns or anything, but they're in a good position, and they've set themselves up really well. So that's what we're going to be monitoring over the next couple of weeks. So we'll end it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please hit the like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. So whenever it is we're going live, we'll be back on Thursday. We're going to have to do, we're going to do it. If you build it, another one, we're going to build out another position. Maybe we'll do wide. Have we done wide receiver yet?
We haven't done wide receiver.
We did quarterback and linebacker. Right? All right. So let's do wide receivers now. If you build it, we're going to have to skip safety, because it's just going to be Kyle. Maybe Kyle's a wide receiver as well. But we'll check that out. We'll check that out. Thank you, everyone. One more time. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you Thursday. Keep hitting and hustling.